Welcome, Elina Härkönen. Unfortunately, Maria Huhmarniemi could not come. So, and you heard just last night, in her last minute, just before jumping to the night train. Elina is coming from Rovaniemi, from Lapland. And yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, yes, my colleague Maria Huhmarniemi got sick and announced 2 hours before our train was supposed to leave that she can't come. So our presentation is a little bit different than we first thought, but bear with me. I'm going to talk to you today about our master's program called Arctic Art and Design, and it's an international program for artists and designers. And to put it into more the context that we discussed it, now I'm going to discuss more on the place-specific approaches that we intend to use in our approaches. I need to try to organize all these technical things. It would be so much easier to just talk. Okay, but this specific program was launched 2015, but it's even though this is a new program and a pilot program, it's a process. It's a result of a long development process at the university. And for the development of this particular program, we got 3-year funding from European Social Fund, and it's going to end next July. And after that, this program will be part of university's own funding projects. And the initiative here is to seek the intersection between applied visual arts and service design. I'm going to explain a little bit more about what applied visual arts mean in this context, and also what service design brings to that. But the main aim has been to increase job opportunities, especially for visual artists in the north. I guess it's a problem all over Finland that we don't have so many job opportunities for artists and designers. So trying to bring new opportunities through this training for them to specialize in the Arctic conditions. And here when I speak Arctic, I speak Finnish context. So Arctic is a vast area, and I by no means have the knowledge of the whole thing. So I feel comfortable speaking about the Finnish context. And this, anyway, the Circumpolar North is present in our program as well. We coordinate this Arctic Sustainable Arts and Design Network. And it basically means a collaboration between art and design institutions around the Circumpolar North. And that influences on the ways we work, what we want to get the results of, and what are the approaches. And just a little bit about these boring facts about the program itself. I move on to the more specific examples later on, but the idea is that the students study project-based. And what it means is that we believe that the knowledge is constructed in collaboration and interaction with people. So it's not only individuals producing or we giving the information to the students. So what it means in this project-based learning is that they have one big project that they go do outside the university wall. So it can be communities, village communities, it can be different associations, small and medium-sized businesses, and third sector, whatever we find partners from. And usually it's quite, the partners determine the need, and the students' influence on what type of activity is done. So we basically step aside and help, but the actual collaboration is done between the partner and the student group. And here, if the students decide that they do their master's thesis, that they usually do, it's a big part of their studies. So we recommend that they take this research point of view to this in order to make more sustainable results and design and everything that if they have this, usually we use art-based action research because it's the activities that are researched in the project. And when they take this research approach to this, they spend more time on looking at the background, seeking for theoretical backgrounds, interviewing people, going backward, using the cycles of action research, so trying out, realizing what doesn't work, what works, doing again another cycle, and that way the long-term impacts are seen to be better. So this is basically the structure of the studies, how they do that. And when we go to applied visual arts in this context, it was already in our university, the development work started already in the 90s, and this socially engaged applied visual arts has roots in community art and environmental art. And I guess the main word to use here is collaboration. So instead of artists just working in studios and producing their individual art, which is by no means a bad thing, but here when we're trying to find new opportunities for employment, we encourage them to go out. And here the process starts with the people or the place or whoever is the end user in a way. So the planning and everything, and also the process of art, is done in collaboration. So it's not only the artists. That's one component, but the partners or the collaborators has as big role as the artist itself. And I mentioned this place specificity in my heading, and that's very big part of applied visual arts, at least in our context. And it means that we are not just producing art despite of the environment, that it has to somehow relate to its multiple layers of the place, meaning the environment and its physical appearances. But it also has different phenomenological appearances and outcomes, and also the social cultural dimensions, meaning that people have relations to the places. So they, especially in the cases where we go out as an outsiders to the place, we have to be very sensitive and let the people who know the place share it, what they want, what it looks like, what is needed. And usually when we start these processes, it's always the partner who makes the initiative towards us, that they want to have something. There's a problem or there's a need that needs to be fixed and they want to do collaboration. It doesn't usually work that way, that we have a grand idea and we go somewhere and maybe you need this type of thing. It doesn't usually bring so good results, but sometimes it works. And the students, when they start this process, they are encouraged to do place research. That's the first step. So they visit the place, they interview people, they read books, they Google, and do this quite big research before even doing anything else. And then when they have some kind of initial understanding of the place, and they've maybe heard stories and they know what the people in that end want, then the planning process begins. And it's quite nerve-breaking to a student who doesn't necessarily know the environment so well and has some initial ideas, but then negotiating with the community or changes everything that the first thought. So it's a struggle. It doesn't go like a very smooth process that is always a nice and clean process, but the outcomes working like this are more sustainable in our opinion. So the ongoing dialogue is necessary here. And when we bring the culture-based service design into this, this is basically designing services as it is. But it has very structural approach to everything, that it has steps like action research as well. So it makes first drafts and then it tests it and then going back and forth. So kind of failing often and early, as they say. So when bringing this to the art concept, they have a lot of similarities and they support each other quite nicely. So this is why we wanted to combine these two and encourage students to try to find different elements from both of these disciplines to make the process and the outcomes more user-friendly or user-driven. And there's one example on the picture. Our student made this paper city planning tool when there was a process that the city was being replanned. And this tool was quite simple. She had different groups she worked with. So this particular picture was taken in an elderly house where they discussed what the city needed to in order to the elderly find it easier for them to use. So through this tool, people that don't usually have a say in the city planning now had some influences as well. So me as a PhD student, I'm interested on the cultural sustainability in these, especially in the context that we work with the communities, become outsiders to the communities. And when my student group, they usually come from different backgrounds, nationalities, and have very little pre-knowledge of the Arctic region, so what it is, what type of mentalities. That's a difficult thing in Lapland to realize the mentality behind the silence and trying to read between the lines and without understanding the language. So these are really sensitive topics that are brought together in these working contexts. And so this is actually part of the Blaze research, that they should somehow understand the social culture context in the Arctic, that is the indigenous cultures and the realities of geography. So we have long distances, whatever is a plant that needs to be considered. The weather is quite changing all the time, and then the threats that are changing the Arctic and rest of the world as well, so climate change. And in Arctic especially, the unemployment and lack of educational opportunities, so young people move away, and especially men find less and less work because of the drastic change of industries in the area. So my study is quite in the early stages. I'm not very deep in this yet, but I've realized that the more I get familiar with cultural sustainability, I realize I cannot separate it from any other of the 4 pillars of sustainability. It needs to be, if I think of culture, I need to think of social aspects. If I think of social aspects, I need to think of economic aspects. If I think of economic aspects, I need to think ecological aspects. So they're all combined together. So these are the issues that we try to deal with the students when we go out and work with people in the area. So now I've used almost half of my time, so I'll quickly go through a few examples of the student projects that we've done. And this is called Enon Tulet and Art That. And it's two of our AD students, Juho Hiilivirta and Liu Huang, started working with Enontekiö municipality, which is the arm of Finland. It's the whole arm actually is the municipality, so it's a big area geographically, but not a lot of people live there. There's 26 villages that belong to this area, and the municipality contacted us that they wanted to do collaboration to create an art park in the center of Enontekiö that is over there. And by then we didn't have a clear understanding what it would be, what would be the outcome of it. And this is still ongoing, so we don't have the final results yet. But when we met the people in the villages several times, we started to realize that they're not so keen to having an art park in there, in the center of the municipality, that rather they would like to work more to unifying the communities. It's quite intercultural area. There's Sami people living in the area, Finnish people, then Norwegian border is close and Swedish border on that side. So there's a lot of influences in the area and very rich history. So it started to form like the reindeers when they walk in the lines, they walk from one place to another. So this art started to form to be an art that would go from one village to another. And in each village we would do something together with the communities. In there, what the materials they use, so environmental art basically, and our students wanted to bring it more close to the stories that each village would tell, so that it would really have a local aspect. And the first one was last March. The fox was here. And this story is the methodology of the fox stepping on the snow, leaving footprints on the snow, and then jumping to the sky and swifting with his tail to create the northern lights. So we work with the community there and use this very simple way of making this art piece on the field of Hetta. And sorry, too fast. So there you see, it's just the size is. It was quite a challenge to get them circles, because you can't see when you're on the ground. So some of them they are not so. But it was an exercise of communication, really, of how to do this in a way. And then it was filmed and with the drone. So there's a video here, but I trust the techniques nowadays so little that I skipped the video. But here is the end result of that. And the next village we went to was Vuontisjärvi, and it's quite unusual scenery in Finland that have these high sand dunes, and we were kind of amazed of it looks like Egypt or Sahara or something. So how is it possible? And we heard the true story that happened in 1860. So 150 years ago, there was a very active man in the village called Rovaniku who owned hay fields. So hay is one of the main features in Vuontisjärvi that people have throughout the history cultivated hay. And he thought that one of his fields was not producing hay very well, so it was quite dry. So he wanted to do something to make it more prosperous and productive. And he knew that the lake, Vuontisjärvi, would flood every spring. And he, with this helper, decided to dig a pit to the lake, that it would flood a little bit on his field as well, so that the hay would grow faster. And it took several months for them to dig. They digged and digged and digged, and then it was almost finished, that there was a really small cracks, and he saw that the water started slowly coming, and he went to cook coffee or something to look at his beautiful work that he's now done, and it was and the land or the soil was too weak because it was this sandy type of soil, so it didn't take the pressure of the water. So the water started flooding like crazy and broke everything. So his field went, his cooking machines and everything went, and the noise of the rushing water was so loud that it actually was heard in the center of Enontekiö, and the people thought that this is now the end of the world, that now God is coming down and now something's happening to us. So now if you visit Vuontisjärvi, this used to be the bottom of the lake, so this is the reason of the sand, and it was 6 meters deep, but now it's now there's this very beautiful sand dunes left. There's a small lake left, but there's a new river that is called Vuontisjoki that is still there, and so the landscape changed completely because of his active reorganizing. And we met people that were related to him straight in line, so that it was their great somebody, and they so it was an interesting story, and some people were thinking that this is a good thing because now we have this very beautiful rare looking village, but some other people said that he ruined the lake because the water ran so fast that the fish were left on the dry land, so people went picking the fish with bare hands, and they said that that was the last time that people in Vuontisjärvi got good fish. And this was another feature. I mentioned the hay already. So there was this man who was scratching his head, who is still doing a very old-fashioned way of drying hay. So he built these hasio structures and collects hay several times in the summer and puts them to dry on that. And he educated us how to build that kind of proper hasio structure. And we started working on these two elements. So the story of that, the rushing water that left everything behind, and then the hay of the village. And these were the two things that the villagers mentioned to us when we started working. So this is a very lovely experience. It's a village of 60 people, and 30 people participated in the process. So here is their hasio, and the reason why it has so many things hanging there is because of it resembles of the water that left everything, pots and pans and everything behind. So, and they were laughing kind of that this is a new way to do this hay work, but we are kind of liking it. So it is a very so they named it hasio of memories, meaning that while they were working together, they memorized all these traditions and visualized their village, and also they were proud to show it to us who came from outside. What's the time now? I quickly show this is, so then Maria now, who is not here, has a very small part of the presentation, and this is her working in the northern Sweden, and as an environmental artist and mother and art educator, she's been worried about the alienation of children from the nature, that the plastic toys and everything nowadays take their attention, that kids they're not familiar with forests anymore as they used to be. And in the area, there's also big struggles between the mining companies and different tourist companies and local livelihoods so she's kind of in her art, she's taking part to that discussion of that the minds that we use are because of our way of living, or the standard. Our life, the level of life, or what is it, quality of life is so high, So we actually cause it ourselves, that we need to have minds and everything to kind of keep it up our lifestyle. So this is what she's in her works trying to address. So she started creating these art adventures for small children in the village, and they, with her partner, they created this adventure park. So there were little fairy tales and stories around the forest, and the kids went through and they heard stories and they got some activities done, and these were kind of camp-based, so it took a few days and they stopped everywhere and went to sleep in a house, though they're not sleeping in the forest, but spent time in the forest and played there and heard adventures and named it the Adventure Forest. So there were several different things that they built. So she's using her own installation pieces, bring to the forest and bring it back. And then this is based on the notion that the forest doesn't have to be so adventurous or anything special. It can be a park or anything. This is the stories or little things that are done actively there. Make the kids to be familiar with the forest and start finding their own adventures there again. And with the help of parents and some picnics and stuff, so it becomes a nice thing. So they made those little artworks with the materials that they found. So this is my story. Thank you.